Hello you guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Sadaf and I love all things home decor and DIY. So for today's video, I wanted to share 3 of my all-time favorite DIYs that I've done in the past. So if you like that type of content, please consider subscribing and liking this video. Let's get into the DIYs. For my first DIY, I wanted to make a textured pillow because I think every boho room needs one. I'm using this natural fabric. It almost looks like a canvas fabric. I then used some tape to stop it from fraying, and here you can see I'm just measuring, and I decided to do a simple design. I'm just drawing some lines here, but you could do other designs as well as long as they have straight lines. I don't think this method would work on wavy patterns. Then when you're done with your design, you need a frame. I made a frame out of a wire. You want your wire to be bendable but not flimsy. And I'm just wrapping some macrame, 3mm macrame around the wire. I just decided to use this natural color. Then I'm going to sew on top of the cord. Here I'm just taking my time, making sure the line is centered and just making the cords look all tidy and neat. I didn't want any gap between the cords and I didn't want them overlapping. You want to make sure you're just sewing on the line that you've drawn, and then when you're done, you want to cut the loops on the sides of the macrames and just repeat the same thing until you're done with all of your lines. When I was done with my line, I just decided to sew on top of it one more time just to be safe and make sure my cords weren't going anywhere. And then I just brushed and unraveled all of the macrames. You want to make sure you unravel all of them. It gives it a better look, and just cut them short. I wasn't a fan of the crazy long look, so I just cut them short and then used my fingers to kind of fluff them up again. I repeated the same process for all the lines that I had drawn, and here's how my fabric looked. I then used another piece of fabric and just made the other side of the pillow and filled it up, and here's how my pillow looked. For the second project, I wanted to recreate one of the pieces that have this type of almost like a woven part at the top. I had this terracotta bowl. I had already drilled some holes at the top. I actually painted it black once, but then I changed my mind. I wanted to give it a almost like a concrete or stone like effect, so I washed the black paint. I used some gray, a little bit of black, and some white acrylic paint. I'm just starting with the gray paint here, just randomly putting the paint on top of the bowl, and then I just add a little bit of the black paint in a random spot. It doesn't have a rhyme or reason. You just want to add a little bit of the black paint here. I'm using a wet sponge. Not wet, it was a little bit moist, and just dabbing on top of the paint to blend the colors together. Then I just added some white paint here, a little more of the black. The black paint is quite strong, so you want to be careful A little bit of it goes a long way. But I'm just using the sponge and blending the colors together. I just kept on adding more paint wherever I felt like it was too light or too dark, or if a spot dries before you can blend it, you can just add some more paint on top of it and then blend it again. I'm using a thick paint. I didn't use any water to water it down, but I think it would have made it a lot easier to blend the paints. But anyways, it kind of gave it a texture almost because of how thick the paint was. And I just kept on doing the same thing for the whole bowl. And honestly, I was obsessed. I could just stop here. I loved the way it looked, but I had some raffia. I folded a long piece of raffia and then folded it again, fed the raffia through one of the holes. And then I'm just making an X pattern at the top and then feeding ends of the raffia through the next hole in different directions. Here I was struggling a little bit to get the raffia through the hole again, but it worked. And then you want to pull them, and here's how they look from the sides. And then just created another X and repeated the same process. Just make sure to have a long piece of raffia because you could run out of it in the middle. When I was done, I just tied a knot and my bowl was complete. This one has to be one of my all-time favorite DIYs. I'm just obsessed with how it looks. When I styled it, the lighting was bad, but here you can see. For the last project, I wanted to make one of these rose wall hangings, but I wanted to make my own version of it. Again, I'm using some raffia and a needle and some macrame rope this time. I put the raffia on top of my macrame and I wrapped the raffia around the rope, going towards the end. I just made sure to wrap on top of the free end of the raffia to hide it. And I just wrapped, making sure none of the rope was showing. And I'm using a macrame rope, but you could use any other type of rope. And actually my macrame was quite flimsy, so my wall hanging actually ended up being a little bit flimsy. You could use other ropes. I just wrapped it until I was almost done. When I got to that point, I just folded it and started wrapping on top of both ends of the rope, as you can see. I just wrapped it around them and then folded it again. I'm using the needle on the other side of the raffia to feed it through the loop that we've created, and then I just pulled on it to make it secure and tight, and I just repeated doing the same thing. I just kept on wrapping a little more, and then again feeding my raffia through the hole in the middle, and then just kept on wrapping again. When you're running out of your raffia, you can just add a longer piece right next to the short piece. Use the short piece to wrap it on top of the long piece a couple times, and it helps secure the longer piece in place. My short piece was a bit too short, but it worked. I just did the same thing a few more times, but then here, when I fed my raffia through the previous row, I didn't make it as tight, and I actually wrapped the raffia around itself a couple of times to create a gap. And this helps give it almost that rose-like look. Again, I just wrapped it on top of the macrame. The same thing again, it's quite repetitive. I'm not pulling, and I'm creating a gap and then wrapping my raffia around itself. Almost creates like a knot. You want to do it a couple times, 2 to 3 times, and just move on to the next piece. I wanted my wall hanging to look kind of organic, so I didn't want my distances to be the same all the way. I just did this until I was happy with the way my wall hanging looked, and here I just unraveled the remaining of my raffia. I could have done this from the beginning, to be honest, and I just cut the rope, wrapped my raffia around the whole thing, and kind of just create the end. Used some hot glue, and here's how my rose wall hanging looks. Thank you for watching. Again, if you like this type of content, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. And I hope to see you again. Bye!